You know, for years, it seemed like the road to an all-electric future was a one-way street, right? A superhighway, even. But lately, some of the world's biggest car companies are suddenly signaling for a turn, or maybe even an off-ramp. So in this explainer, we're going to dive into this fascinating detour the auto industry is taking and why the real revolution might not be what you think.
See, we're talking about a fundamental transformation here. The car is stopping being just a piece of hardware, an engine, four wheels, and it's becoming this sophisticated, connected computer, a device that can be updated, upgraded, and personalized entirely through software, just like your phone.
And to really wrap your head around that, get this. The average car rolling off the line today has something like 150 to 200 million lines of code. But in just 5 years, that number is projected to absolutely explode to anywhere between 300 and 600 million. Yeah, we are talking about a level of software complexity that rivals a modern jet.
So this whole software revolution, it was supposed to go hand in hand with an electric one. It was this all-electric dream. And for a little while there, it felt like every major automaker was sprinting towards it with incredible confidence.
And the commitment was massive. Automakers were pouring billions into this vision. They were promising this really rapid departure from the internal combustion engine, setting super aggressive deadlines for an all-electric lineup. The future was coming fast. Or so we thought.
And then, bam, the industry just slammed into a major speed bump. A sudden and very public reality check that has forced a dramatic rethinking of this whole transition.
Okay, so what's really fascinating when you look at this slide is just how widespread this whole pullback is. I mean, look at these names. Mercedes, who was aiming to be all-electric by 2030, is now saying they'll be selling combustion engines well into the next decade. Volvo is hedging its bet with plug-in hybrids, and both GM and Ford are hitting the brakes, delaying or even scrapping major EV projects. This isn't just a minor course correction, it's a huge strategic pivot happening all across the industry.
So what's really going on here? Why the sudden change of heart? Well, this quote from Mercedes-Benz really just cuts right to the heart of it. The pace of transformation will be determined by market conditions and the wishes of our customers. The simple truth is, people just aren't buying EVs as fast as everyone predicted. There are still a ton of concerns about high prices, range anxiety, and where to charge the things. The market just isn't moving as fast as the automakers had planned.
And this big reality check has created this really fascinating split in strategy. Automakers are now faced with this fundamental question, and it's leading them down two very different paths, all trying to get to the same future.
It all boils down to one huge question. If you have no idea how many EVs people are going to want next year, how on earth do you build your factories? Do you bet the entire farm on an all-electric future, or do you build in some flexibility? It's this high-stakes bet on the right manufacturing platform. Think of it as the car's fundamental skeleton and nervous system for a market that is just deeply unpredictable right now.
And this slide really lays out the two competing game plans. On one side, you've got the all-in approach. These are platforms purpose-built only for EVs. This gives you amazing performance, sure, but it's a massive, super inflexible investment. And we saw the risk of that when Mercedes had to shelve its next-gen EV platform. On the other side, you have the power of choice. One flexible platform that can handle gas, hybrid, and electric cars. It's way less risky and it adapts to what people are buying, but, there might be some design compromises.
And BMW is the perfect case study for this. Their flexible strategy, which people kind of made fun of at first for being too hesitant, well, now it looks like an absolute masterstroke. By building all their different powertrain types on a single assembly line, they can pivot instantly to whatever the market wants. And the results? They really speak for themselves. A 75% jump in EV sales last year, with EVs growing to 15% of their total sales. They're navigating all this uncertainty beautifully.
And hey, BMW isn't the only one. Giants like Stellantis, that's the parent company of Jeep and Ram, and Toyota are also doubling down on these multi-energy flexible platforms. They see it as the key to meeting all kinds of different global needs and, frankly, reducing the risk of this very uncertain transition.
But here's where the story takes a really interesting twist. Because while everyone's so focused on this battle between gas, hybrid, and electric, the real revolution, the thing that's truly going to define the next generation of cars, it's not about the engine at all. It's all about the software.
This brings us to this key idea, the software-defined vehicle, or SDV. Put simply, it's a car where the software, not the hardware, is in charge of its features and functions. Think about your smartphone again. The hardware is just the platform, right? but the whole experience is defined by the apps and the operating system, which can be updated constantly. That's where cars are headed.
So what does it actually take to build a true SDV? Well, it really comes down to these three pillars. First, you need a totally new hardware setup, like one powerful central brain instead of dozens of little ones all over the car. Second, the software has to be decoupled from the hardware, running on a unified operating system. And third, you need constant connectivity to allow for those over-the-air updates for new features, bug fixes, and even performance boosts.
So when you think about it, this whole debate over dedicated versus flexible platforms, it's not really about powertrains anymore. It's about finding the smartest, most profitable, and most resilient foundation on which to build a true software-defined vehicle. A car that can evolve, improve, and even generate revenue its whole life.
All right, so if flexibility is the winning play for today's crazy market, what could flip the whole game board tomorrow? Let's look at the next wave of technology that could completely reshape this entire landscape.
The biggest wild card out there, by far, has to be the solid-state battery. I mean, just look at this comparison. We're talking about a potential doubling of energy density, which could lead to cars with over 1,200 kilometers of range. And get this, charging times could drop to just 10 to 15 minutes for an 80% charge. And crucially, they replace that flammable liquid with a non-flammable solid, making them way, way safer. Now, this isn't some far-off science fiction, but it's not going to be in your driveway tomorrow either. As you can see here, we're in the very early stages right now, with some semi-solid batteries popping up in premium cars. We can probably expect the first limited production lines to start around 2026 or 2027. But real mass production and affordability? That probably won't happen until 2030 or even later.
And here's why this matters so much. If a breakthrough like this makes EVs cheaper, safer, and just flat out better performing than gas cars in every single way, well, consumer demand is going to explode. And in that world, that high-risk, high-reward bet on dedicated, all-in EV platforms, it could suddenly become the only logical path forward. And that leaves us with the billion-dollar question facing the entire auto industry today. Is this flexible, multi-energy approach just a temporary bridge strategy for survival, or is it the permanent new model? And more importantly, could one single technological leap, like the solid-state battery, suddenly make betting everything on one path the only way to win? It's a fascinating dilemma, and there are no easy answers.